But you know what? But see, that could be then wrapped and given to the guests.
If people don't like it that much, why do you make it that much?
Krishna likes it.
Well, Krishna likes it when it's made well.
I thought I
It's
did.
been around also since
No, I just wondered because that's what is on an offering is 3 separate fruits of dried pollen.
No, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be all.
Okay.
Up to 90.
Oh, okay.
It's not mandatory, because in the old days, we didn't have to. They, Ryan put the stand here on purpose because the other stand completely broke. There's a piece of metal that came off and it's inside another part on another stand. It's completely broken.
No kidding.
Yes, he put
So
it
this is a
on-
backup stand?
This is, yeah, a shorter. This is all that we have now.
No, I have another one at home,
Oh, okay.
but it's identical to this, so I don't know what he's talking about.
He's just, the big stand is what he's talking about. It's right over there. He tried to fix it. He said it's not possible.
What can we do? It's the material world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this one works if you know how to work it. See? It's a little longer, fits perfectly. But you have to have this parallel to this, otherwise it'll tip over. Right? Right. Oh. Okay. We'll manage. I have another one at home, which is basically the same thing, except it has a third little rubber foot here, which is missing. But that's not a game breaker.
You have to put like some concrete in there.
I'm sorry.
You have to put like some concrete or something so it stays.
That's right. That was my idea. All right. Life goes on. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Bhattachandra Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhattachandra Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Mr. Bhagavad Paramahansa Pradipakacharya Astottara to the Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai ISKCON BPT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pradipakacharya Astottara to the Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Feel like I'm in the forest of Naimisharanya. Okay, so 12th? I think it's the 12th or 13th. Is it the 12th? The 12th, yeah. Okay. On this 12th day of July 2017 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 6 entitled Dhyana Yoga, the Yoga of Meditation, and we're on text 35, page 288. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Asankshayam Mahabaho
Asamshayam Mahabaho
Manodu Nigraham Chalam
Manodur Nigrahanchalam
Abhyasena tu Kaunteya
Abhyasena tu Kaunteya
Vairagyena cha grihyate.
Vairagyena cha grihyate.
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Asankshayam Mahabaho
Samshayam Mahabaho
Manodu Nigraham Chalam
Manodur Nigrahanchalam
Abhyasena tu Kaunteya
Abhyasena tu Kaunteya
Vairagyena cha grihyate.
Vairagyena cha grihyate.
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Asankshayam Mahabaho
Asamshayam Mahabaho
Manodu Nigraham Chalam
Manodur Nigrahanchalam
Abhyasena tu Kaunteya
Abhyasena tu Kaunteya
Vairagyena cha grihyate.
Vairagyena cha grihyate.
Go ahead, Parsha.
Shri Bhagavanu
Vacha Asankshayam Mahabaho Manodu Nigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Kaunteya Vairagyena cha grihyate. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Asankshayam Mahabaho Manodu Nigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Kaunteya Vairagyena jiyate. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Asankshayam Mahabaho Manodu Nigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Kaunteya Vairagyena cha grihyate. Go ahead, Natalie. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Asankshayam Mahabaho Manodu Nigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Kaunteya Vairagyena cha grihyate.
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Asamshayam Mahabaho
Asankshayam Mahabaho
Manodur Nigraham Chalam
Manodu Nigraham Chalam
Abhyasena tu Kaunteya
Abhyasena tu Kaunteya
Vairagyena cha grihyate.
Vairagyena cha grihyate. Michael.
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Asamyasham Mahabaho
Asankshayam Mahabaho
Manudigraham Shalam
Manodu Nigraham Chalam
Yadisana Tukunteya
Abhyasena tu Kaunteya
Ragyajena Shakrityati.
Vairagyena cha grihyate. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha, the personality of Godhead, said, Asankshayam, undoubtedly, Mahabaho, O mighty armed one, Manaha, the mind, Dhru Nigraham, difficult to curb, Chalam, flickering, Abhyasena, by practice, but Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, Vairagyena, by detachment, cha also grihate, can be so controlled. Translation. Lord Sri Krishna said, Almighty Armed Son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. Purport. The difficulty of controlling the obstinate mind, as expressed by Arjuna, is accepted by the personality of Godhead. Time out. Give him your book in front. Page 288. Okay. Give me your book. Oh, okay. Thank you. But at the same time, he suggests that by practice and detachment it is possible. What is that practice? In the present age, no one can observe the strict rules and regulations of placing oneself in a sacred place, focusing the mind on the supersoul, restraining the senses and mind, observing celibacy, remaining alone, etc. By the practice of Krishna consciousness, however, one engages in 9 types of devotional service to the Lord. The first and foremost of such devotional engagements is hearing about Krishna. This is a very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgivings. The more one hears about Krishna, the more one becomes enlightened and detached from everything that draws the mind away from Krishna. By detaching the mind from activities not devoted to the Lord, one can very easily learn vairagya. Vairagya means detachment from matter and engagement of the mind in spirit. Impersonal spiritual detachment is more difficult than attaching the mind to the activities of Krishna. This is practical because by hearing about Krishna, one becomes automatically attached to the Supreme Spirit. This attachment is called padeshanubhuti, spiritual satisfaction. It is just like the feeling of satisfaction a hungry man has for every morsel of food he eats. The more one eats while hungry, the more one feels satisfaction and strength. Similarly, by discharging of devotional service, one feels transcendental satisfaction as the mind becomes detached from material objectives. It is something like curing a disease by expert treatment and appropriate diet. Hearing of the transcendental activities of Lord Krishna is therefore expert treatment for the mad mind, and eating the foodstuff offered to Krishna is the appropriate diet for the suffering patient. This treatment is the process of Krishna consciousness. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmiditam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. What a practical purport this is. This is revelatory. So just to go back a couple of verses, now Arjuna is pleading inability to perform this process of yoga. Krishna has described the process in summary. He's described the benefits. He's acknowledged some of the difficulties, certainly. And then after all of that, Arjuna says, can't do it. Yo yam yogastraya prokta. Text 33. O Madhusudan, the system of yoga you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. This is the key problem. And then he continues in that vein. The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna. And to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. So, then Krishna says, without doubt, you're correct. But dur nigraham means very difficult to curb. And chalam is flickering and moving here and there. But it's possible by practice and by detachment. So, that practice and detachment has been outlined, but it's impossible for us. Nobody's going off to the Himalayas. I mean, just to take a trip to the Yosemite Park is a big thing. And even if you do, it's not the same. You know, it's just not the right age for it. Nor do we have the right bodies. Nor do we live long enough. So how are we going to be yogis? Because Krishna says, and you must become a yogi. You become a yogi, O Arjuna. That'll come, I think, in the next couple of verses. So Prabhupada gives the answer in this purport. And the key element is to realize that you're not the mind. Everybody identifies as the mind. I mean, most people also identify with the body. But if somehow you are able to transcend that, you're definitely going to identify with the mind. And as Prabhupada says, it's a mad mind. The mind has been conditioned through so many births and so many experiences in this very life that mind really is in control. It's dominating us. It's dominating the living entity. As, again, referring back to the 3rd chapter, at the end, when he describes the real enemy of the soul, which is the enemy. What is that thing that forces one to do what one doesn't think he should do, even though he knows? It starts with a K. Kama. Kama. Material, powerful material desire, beginning with sex desire. So, what is the effect? How does it work? It infects us. It infects the senses, the mind, and the intelligence. And the very next piece is Avitam Gana. It covers your knowledge. You don't know. You think this is just normal life. This is who I am. I'm just a bundle of senses, and now it's time to enjoy. I mean, don't you remember growing up as a kid? You know, there's various stages, right? First, you can't even crawl. You're just laying back. You know who remembers that, right? And the mother is everything. And all that is good and warm and wonderful is the mother. You know, the mother's body. You know? But gradually, you actually develop your own identity. And in fact, there's a whole. Did you know this? There's a whole festival in Vedic culture when a child, instead of just lying back, can turn over and start crawling. It's called the Uttana ceremony, and it's mentioned in the 10th canto when Krishna, first turned over and started. Then they had this Uttana ceremony. It's just for the mothers. Men, forget it. It's just for the women. You know. So what did they do? Now, Mother Yashoda was busy greeting all her friends, and she put Krishna in the bassinet underneath the big handcart, which turned out to be a demon. And he's moving his legs. And the other older children, the 1-year-olds and the 2-year-olds, were watching Krishna, the 3-year-old. And he moves his little pedal-like feet, and he knocked down this huge cart. Anyway, but every child goes through these stages, normal children. And then, comes that point when you're actually able to walk. And it's not before, it's not long after that when you can run. Then the mother really has to watch the child, keep the fence open. So there's now the whole new world opens up. And it's a world of the senses. What's interesting and then what's dangerous and all this thing. And you're living with this little childlike mind. You don't know it. And then as you grow older, various, fields of enjoyment grow up, and suddenly there's friends, and there's things to do, and there's games, and all this stuff, and then, 13, 14, there's a whole new thing happening. And this is all you know as your life. And then, billions of kids grow up, and they pass through, and they die, and there's old people. So, without this knowledge, to try to analyze, you have to see who you are. That's the first aspect. That's why Krishna begins with that in the 2nd chapter. Arjuna's arguments were all based on the bodily concept of life. His bodily relationship with his grandfather Bhishma, and it was more than bodily relationship, but it was a material relationship with his teacher Dronacharya. He was highly indebted. He loved him. And then there's those relatives, blood relatives, and in-laws he sees on the other side. So his gut is saying, I don't want them to die. In fact, he even says at one point, which is most amazing, I don't even want to live without the sons of Dhritarashtra. They're the ones that tried to kill him. They tried to burn him alive in the house of lac. And here, he's forgiven all that. He says, I don't care. I don't want the kingdom if it's soaked with their blood. So all these arguments, what's going on there is that he's got this visceral feeling of attachment. He's taken this role to all of these people, and his intelligence is coming up with arguments to justify it. This is the classic thing, is that the higher self serves the lower self. This is what's going on with material life, and the more that happens, the more deeper in the modes of passion and ignorance. And the lower self just wants, your animal self. So Arjuna is symbolic of that. He's representing that. The universal problem of the conditioned soul is that the knowledge is covered by the modes of nature, infused with the material desire, lust. This is all outlined at the end of the 3rd chapter. So by the words of the Shastra, by the words of the Guru, the realized sages, in other words, by an intervention of someone who is not bound, who is transcendental, this is the only hope for the human being, for the living being, is in its human form when we have the intellect to understand these things. And then, instead of yielding to the demands of the kama-infused senses and mind, we control them. But you can't repress it. You have to engage. And that first engagement is to hear. And in this age, in every age, but in this age especially, the holy name is the great blessing. Because just by hearing and repeating that holy name, the mind becomes cleansed. Ceto Darpana Marjana. That's the first installment of what Chaitanya did, and we can all experience that. Because Krishna truly is all attractive for the soul. Even we don't know anything of the philosophy, but the most inconceivable thing, which we're still trying to realize, is that the name is Krishna. There's no, I hear Prabhupada say, there's no difference at all. No difference at all. You hear all about Krishna and his form and his activities, and there's this sound, holy name. But this is the inconceivable aspect of oneness and difference, achintya beta beta tattva. So by coming in contact with the name, and the more we hear and repeat and absorb the mind, we find ourselves being drawn to Krishna and away from Maya. The material things become less interesting, and going to the temple and seeing the deities and being Krishna conscious becomes more attractive. The soul is awakening. And so that, now Prabhupada is emphasizing the hearing process here. It's like a little unit. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. The whole thing is remembering. The idea is to become absorbed in thought. The samadhi was described a few verses back. Being absorbed in thought of the Supreme. So what could be more easy, attractive way to be absorbed in the Supreme than absorbed in the form and qualities and the pastimes of Krishna? Little children, in Bengal and India, in days gone by before the advent of the demonic TV, the entertainment where they would have bards go. They had poets, they would go from town to town. And what would they sing? They would sing the pastimes of Ram, the pastimes of Krishna, and people would be enthralled. And, you remember what it was like? I remember reading novels when I was a kid. I was into it, at nighttime I wouldn't sleep. But I still remember this one science fiction story I read. It was just 3 pages long. It scared me. I remember it to this day. I'm reading this, lying in my safe little bed and hearing. And the whole thing was, I'll just tell you, it takes a minute. It's one of these stories where it just describes ordinary doings going on in different parts of the earth, and everything. And suddenly, the perspective, you go back, and there's some interstellar monster, who's looking for something to eat. And it's like, for him, the earth is a little glubsman. And he takes that earth, he takes the water off, and he pops it into his mouth. That was the whole story, but it was a really scary story. But you live those things, you get into those. I remember, Little Nell. This was a story by Dickens. I was really into Dickens, And this was like an 8th grade assignment. We all read the book. And she was one of these, in the middle of the Industrial Revolution in London, and somehow she went from post to post, and she was an orphan and this and that. And near the end of the book, she died. Oh, God, the tears are coming down my eyes. I'm in 8th grade, writing my little paper, my little, book report, 2 pages long. Got totally into it. So what to speak of, Krishna's pastimes when we these are real. These are the eternal pastimes of the Lord, and they're really all attractive. So in the Kapila Dev's teaching, now Kapila Dev, we're coming up in the morning class. We're in chapter 24. Kardama Muni is praying to Kapila, who's just appeared, to Devahuti. And Kardama is about to take sannyas and leave Kapila Dev with his glorious mother, and then he's going to teach her for 6 chapters, which are wonderful, Sankhya Yoga, But in the course of that teaching, at the beginning, he has this Sadhu Sangashtaka, which I won't go through the whole thing again. I think I've done it about 10 times in this class. But the like keystone verse is this satam prasangan mama virya samvido bhavanti ritkana rasayana kata. It's exactly pertinent. He's saying, this is Kapila Deva, who's a yogi and is teaching yoga, but he's saying the easiest type of yoga is to come amongst the devotees, the satams, the sadhus, the whole thing about sadhu, and just sit there, just hear. What are you going to hear? You're going to hear Krishna Katha. It's a mama virya samvido, conversations or talks about my powerful activities. Kapila Deva is Krishna, right? And what's the result? First of all, what's the experience? Bhavanti rit karna rasayana katha. This katha, this talk, acts as a life-giving elixir. Rasayana is like it wakes you up, it revives you. But for the heart and for the ear, in other words, it's very delightful. It's not like a great austerity. You're sitting there, and by performing this simple yoga process of hearing, what's the result? Tadjoshanat means employing this path. Ashu, quickly, apavarga vartmani, you go along the path of liberation. Prabhupada explained this, apavarga. Apavarga means liberation from birth and death. And that's not all. You develop shraddha, rati, bhakti, anukamishri. Step by step, you develop faith in Krishna and everything transcendental. And you develop attraction, and you develop pure devotion. And then the next phrase, he says, this is Rijubir yoga. This is the easiest form of yoga that it can be. And it's perfectly suitable for this age. The more the merrier. Krishna says, go alone. You have to be completely aside. And this is, come together. Let's have 1,000 in the kirtan. I've never been in a kirtan with 1,000, but I've been in some big kirtans. It's overwhelming, because everybody is like, uplifting everyone else. This is the whole idea. Rather than distraction, it becomes, So that's the abhyas. Abhyas means a practice for the bhaktas. But it requires that one hear and develop faith in the process, enough to begin it. And that comes also from the sadhu sangha. Now Prabhupada talks about hearing. He doesn't mention here, but it's mentioned in many other places, the source of the hearing. The source has to be a devotee. Because that faith, that interest, that attraction to Krishna is also saturated within the voice within. At one point Prabhupada talks about, there's this famous purport in the 4th canto, I can give you the reference if you need it, how the voice of the pure devotee, spiritual master, is saturated with the saffron mercy particle from the lotus feet of Krishna. And when one hears that, it enters in and you become purified. That's why we're having our class, we revived it, I hope we can keep it forever. The morning Prabhupada lecture, we started again, on Mondays. Yeah, Monday morning. And it's hard to understand Prabhupada, so I create a little PowerPoint, so we're projecting the words, you can read the words. It's important to hear, because there's a special power in the voice also. When you hear someone who's, chanting, who's really there, like Prabhupada's chanting, and I heard Prabhupada who loved it, Krishnadas Babaji, his god brother, there's some recordings of him. It's not, they're of course, they're not done in a studio or anything, but the effect is, this person really is realized. There's no question about it. And it goes deep. So now the result of the hearing, this is also in another little ashtaka that I discovered within the Bhagavatam, at the very end, in the 12th canto or 13th, I forget. It's in the 12th canto, but it's in the, I think, 13th chapter, 12th or 13th. And it's like Sutta Goswami's last words, his last lesson. He's taught the whole Bhagavatam to the sages of Naimisharanya. Now he's about ready to get up and leave and wander into the forest. And these are his last words. And it's all about the importance of hearing and chanting. The verses begin with the word Sankirtan. Sankirtamano Bhagavan Ananta. And he's saying that those who hear the powerful messages about Bhagavan, he enters into the heart and cleanses away all the impurities. And of course attracts you. But then he gives a warning. But on the other hand, those vibrations that aren't about Krishna, and he quotes a verse from the 5th chapter, 1st canto, all the way from back to the 1st canto, the famous verse about the pilgrimage of crows. It may be very nice, but just chitrapadam. Chitrapadam is everything very poetic and beautiful, but it has nothing to do with Krishna. Even it's like a pilgrimage of crows. This is the problem, is that it's attractive to the material mind, and you get absorbed in that, and you lose your touch with Krishna. So therefore, Tat Bhagavad Sargo, even the imperfectly composed words are accepted and chanted and heard by the learned souls, because it's all about Krishna. And Prabhupada took that second verse, and he took it and put it in his preface, because it inspired him. You know, if you get a chance, some of us have seen, you know, the first Bhagavatams that Prabhupada brought. There are so many facsimiles now. You know, the language is a little rough. This is my service now. I've been going over the first canto again and again, by comparing to the Delhi Bhagavatam. Amazing the things I found that in the adjustment. But it's, you know, it's probably, I mean, he presented it. This is the books we have. He was selling them in the bookstores. But it's better if it's, you know, a little fixed up. You know, and that's why he gave I Agree with the job to do it. It's not that the editors, you know, pounced on the books and spoiled them. You know, it was Prabhupada's assignment. But the idea is that you know, imperfect English is invaluable compared to all of the fancy words that have nothing to do with Krishna. So this is where the mind comes in, where the discrimination comes in, is that we have to discriminate what we're hearing and what we're chanting, and in that way we can actually curb the mind. The mind becomes naturally attracted to Krishna. Then you're home free. You know, the gopis are the perfect devotees, right? So they're in a situation where they're 100% thinking of Krishna. But sometimes externally it's presented as a painful situation because Krishna's gone. They can't forget Krishna. He's off in Mathura, he's off in Dwarka, you know, and they're back in Vrindavan. There's one poem called the Hansa Duta. You know, everyone hears Hansa Duta, they think of Hansa Duta Das. But originally the name is, Hansa Duta means the swan messenger. And the scene is, you know, the gopis, you read it in the Krishna book, you know, how in the Nectar of Devotion, the devastation, you know, externally, for the residents of Vrindavan. The coward boys, they said their minds are like cotton, they couldn't do anything, they're wandering around. You know, and the gopis are devastated, they're going here and there, everything reminds them of Krishna, you know. So the whole, what happens is, the scene is, Radharani and her friends, the gopis, Lalita, Vishaka, they're on the bank of the Yamuna, and Radharani has fainted, and the gopis are trying to revive her, and they're fanning her, and so Lalita is, you know, she's distraught also. So she goes off to they're on the bank of the river, so she just walks a little way away, and she sees this swan flying, you know, right above the water. So just as Radharani took the bee to be a messenger from Krishna, so that she takes this swan not to be a messenger, but you can become our messenger to Krishna. You can go to Mathura and you can give him a letter, you know. So she starts describing Radharani's situation, you know, and it's all like pain. It's, you know, it's the highest pleasure, but it looks like the greatest pain, and it's an incredible poem. It's like over 100 long verses of this. Some of them are quoted in the Antya-lila. So one of the moods is described in the Krishna Karnamrita, and that is enough already. We've had so much thinking about Krishna. Now let's think of something else. It's too painful. So this is what the verse is. Kamiha kunamak kasya bhuma katum katamashaya katiyate katamanyam dhanyam ahodadeshaya modara modara kare manoma yanotsave kupana krishna tishna chidam. I memorized that many years ago. So what Radharani is telling another gopi, let everything we've been trying to do to meet Krishna be finished now. Enough already. You know. Say something auspicious, but whatever you do, don't say anything about Krishna. Say something else auspicious. You know, but there's a whole Vidayeshya, but oh alas, he's in my heart. This sweet, sweet, beautiful, smiling face and form of Krishna are in there again. A whole Vidayeshya. Kripana Krishna Krishna. This wretched desire to meet Krishna is increasing at every moment. So this is an example, you know, way beyond that we could imagine. But this is where the mind is so attracted to Krishna, you can't forget. It's just natural. This is spontaneous devotion. But actually, it means it's this flow of pleasure, of seeing, of thinking of Krishna, speaking of Krishna, hearing Krishna, serving Krishna. Imagine this, you know. All right, we're devotees. So it's been a long day of fasting. Say in the string of days, you know, fast. They break it at moonrise, I think, or something like that, or twilight. So it's a long. So now the feast has come out. It's been expertly, you know, prepared with devotion, and it's time to honor the feast. And so, as we're honoring the feast, we're relishing the different tastes of the preparations that have been lovingly prepared and offered to Krishna. But there's a certain point where you can't eat anymore, right? You've had your third pakora, you know, your second helping of the wonderful curd sabji. That's it, you know. Now, so there's a pleasure. There's a transcendental pleasure. You're tasting and you're experiencing. You're being nourished. But there are limits because you're, you know, the limit. So imagine that there's no limit. In other words, your ability to enjoy is not limited because it has nothing to do with the body. You're doing it with your spiritual body. This is why how you find the six Goswamis or Lord Chaitanya. They're you know, they don't want to sleep. You know, an hour and a half is too much. If that, they say, if that, you know, something. Because they're hearing, they're chanting, they're writing. You know, and I got a little taste of just a little drop of that, you know, writing these poems, you know, and then you finish and there's like some little expression of Krishna, you share it with others, you know, it's pure pleasure. And to be able to write like Raghunath Das Goswami, he never erased anything. He wrote in such a way that it was carved into, you know, there was no question of erasing. And it all came out perfect, you know. So the point is that the process of devotional service at that higher level is such a steady pleasure that you don't want it to end. And even though you have to eventually sleep, like it describes Madhavendra Puri, you know, who was at this highest level, and he went to Vrindavan, and he's just chanting Hare Krishna, you know, and he has this interaction with the young boy who turns out to be Krishna himself, you know. And then eventually he says he slept. But what was he doing when he's sleeping? He's just continuing to serve Krishna in his dream, in his mind. You know, there's no question of stopping. You just have to stop you have to let the external body rest for a while. So this is even in this life, even when in this body, you can experience like that. So where is the question of meditation controlling the mind? The mind is maya sakta manapati. He begins the next chapter. Here I'm going to teach you how your mind can be attached to me, be attracted to me. And then that will solve your problem of controlling that flickering mind. But we're so conditioned, you know, to looking here, looking there, and trying to enjoy the material modes, that unless we force the mind and keep it, and this is sadhana bhakti, it tends to wander away and get into the modes of nature. But really, you know, the natural state of the soul and the pure mind and intelligence is to be always linked with Krishna in varieties of ways. And that we find that with Prabhupada. You know, what was he doing? Day in, day out. He was glorifying somehow. He was, you know, or he was bringing other souls to Krishna, which is the most nectarian thing. And he wasn't stopping. You know, he had to take rest, but he'd get up at 12 at night and, you know, do the dictating, managing, and all this stuff. And it was all, you know, for his beloved Lord and his act of love. There's one verse I'll share with you in the 11th canto. This is another little section that I memorized once. It's still in there, but little pieces are starting to have to renew it. It's the first teaching of one of the 9 Yogendras, the first teaching. And like the second, I think the second verse, third verse, no, fourth verse. He gives like a little summary of bhakti, which is kind of an expansion on a verse in the 9th chapter. Yat karoshi yarashnasi. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you give away, do it as an offering to me. So here he says, he's more thorough, you know. Kayena vacha manasendriyava buddhyatmanava nusata svabhava. Karoti yadyat sakalam parasmai narayanayeti samarpayetat. Whatever you do with your, it covers all the bases. Kayena, with your body, with your words, with your mind, with your senses, with your intelligence, with yourself, as you have developed them, as you've been given them according to your karma. We all have sets of these. Karoti yadyat sakalam param. Everything you do with them, you feel this is an offering to Narayan. In other words, you're very breathing, you're walking, you're talking, this is an offering. Now, of course, if it's not an offering to Narayan, it doesn't work so well. So it really has to be trained how to link all those things. But that's exactly the mood. Now imagine this, is that, a mother loves a child. And there's certain intimate, interactions, feeding the child, breastfeeding the child, putting the child to sleep, singing lullabies, which are memorable, which are pure expressions of love. There's other things where she has to chastise the child or take the child to school, where it may be a little different. But the point is that the activities that she performs, in those intimate relationships, this is all an expression of love. It's not an austerity. It's not that you have to concentrate to do it. It's a natural flow. So imagine your whole life like that. Prabhupada's picking up the phone. You could see there was a certain artistry. It wasn't just, we pick up the phone and it's just like, who cares, it's just a phone. But imagine, that phone is now being used in the service of Krishna, It's an act of love. I'm doing it for Krishna, And everything you do, walking, talking, it's all for Krishna. So it all becomes simply an expression of love, and it becomes a source of pleasure. This is the state of the greatest Bhagavats, of the greatest devotees. The remembrance of Krishna is steady, no question. But the varieties of love and a loving exchange that you can experience are endless, just by living. So that of course, vairagya there is extreme. There's no question of it. There's not even any thought of any activity. Why would there be? Why would you stop doing the thing that's most pleasurable in order to do something that's painful? Our problem is that we don't, because we're conditioned and we're getting affected by the modes. Krishna consciousness, the activity is like painful. Getting up for Mangalarti. Again? I did it yesterday. Or whatever, whatever we have to do, washing those pots. We forget that these are Krishna's pots. These are it's all like Anyway, I'm getting a little carried away. Any questions on this verse? This is a great purport. All right, let's do one more. Again, asangshayatmana. So both verses begin with the same word, without doubt. Yeah. Asangatatmana yogo. I'm sorry, it's not the same word. It looks the same, but it's different. Dushprapa iti me mati. Vashyatmana tu yatata. Shakyo vaptum upayataha. For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. But he whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured of success. That is my opinion. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead declares that one who does not accept the proper treatment to detach the mind from material engagement can hardly achieve success in self-realization. Trying to practice yoga while engaging the mind in material enjoyment is like trying to ignite a fire while pouring water on it. Yoga practice without mental control is a waste of time. Such a show of yoga may be materially lucrative, but it is useless as far as spiritual realization is concerned. Therefore, one must control the mind by engaging it constantly in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Unless one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, he cannot steadily control the mind. A Krishna-conscious person easily achieves the result of yoga practice without separate endeavor. But a yoga practitioner cannot achieve success without becoming Krishna-conscious. So, for one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. Well, that's the task, to try to bridle that mind. It's like Krishna says in the 8th chapter, how's it go? Forget the Sanskrit. But he says, for one who is constantly thinking of me, I am very easy to attain. Yeah, but the part of coming to the point of always thinking of you, that's the hard part. In other words, one whose mind is unbridled, that's Arjuna's complaint, my mind is unbridled. So, and the problem is that the process that he's given in this chapter is not suitable for Arjuna, and it's certainly not suitable for us. So, what we get from this chapter, there's so much invaluable instruction, is that by the proper process of Krishna consciousness, we can achieve what is described in this chapter. Not by the means that Krishna gave it, but by a different means, a different process. But the end is the same. The end result is the same. The control of the mind, the fixing of the mind on the absolute truth in the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and complete liberation from the miseries of this world, birth, death, old age, and disease, and absorption in the unending ocean of bliss, which he describes in this chapter earlier. And understanding and feeling that having once gained this, you'll feel there's nothing greater to be gained. You know, this is exactly what you don't get in the material world. I was reading today an article about you know, when you go to India, at least when we used to go to India, and even today, they don't throw things away if you can at all fix them. You know, and there's a whole industry of people who are expert at fixing things. But here, they have the, you know, it's planned obsolescence. They want you to, you know, get that. You know, why do they have so many, you know, versions of the iPhone? Is it really necessary? You know, I had my flip phone for a long time until finally it was just inadequate. $25 a month, you know, that was it. The phone cost nothing, you know, it's free. So now I had to grow up, so I got a $50, you know, smartphone, which I don't use 90% of the stuff on there, you know. But the point is that everything is to try to keep you agitated, to keep the mind unsatisfied, and you know. So how can there be any peace in such a society? Everywhere you look, there's agitation to try to make. But you know, devotees generally, you know, like I kept my old Windows, what was it, XP? I mean, XP was great. until one day it just couldn't handle everything I was trying to put into it, you know, and it kind of burned out. So I was ready to go down and get another XP machine, but I couldn't. So I got a Windows 7 machine. You know, now Windows 8 came along. I didn't want to touch that, and it turned out to be a real bomb, right? Windows 8. So then it was Windows 10, and they would keep bothering me. They say, "Oh, you can freely upgrade. You can freely upgrade. You can do it." And I kept saying, "No, no, no, no." And I still have Windows 7. What's wrong with it? Especially for what we do. You know, I'm still doing mostly text work, and I'm perfectly satisfied with that. You know, but no. You know, the whole idea is to keep you agitated for more and more consumption. And the result is that, you know, huge landfill filled with old electronics that they pay some poor African country, and then they ship it all over there and dump it there, you know, and poison everything. You know. Poor kids rummaging through, you know. But the earth can't take it. You know, all of this. It's horrible. But it's exactly the opposite of Krishna consciousness. You know, the ideal is simple living, high thinking. As simply as possible. The whole fashion industry. We love the fashion industry. It's such a relief not to worry about, oh, I'll tell you one thing. I keep... Should I tell my secret? I was robbed a few months ago in a laundromat. I won't tell you that. I had collected kurtas, which is very convenient. I only had to do laundry once every 2 weeks, you know. So I had like 20 kurtas, you know, which I would, anyway. So they were in a couple of nice blue nylon bags, and I was sitting there reading the Chaitanya Bhagavad on my little iPad, you know. And it didn't dawn on me that these homeless people can also be thieves. So one guy walks in, you know, I don't notice him, and he walks out. I didn't even know it until I tried to, you know, find them. And suddenly my blue bags are gone with my 20 dried, clean but not dried kurtas.
I think I saw that on the camera.
I wouldn't doubt it. And we were running around. You even tried to find them, right? Did you look in the dumpsters? Because he obviously was only, or maybe he thought he was getting something valuable, but what would be valuable? Just the bags themselves, not the kurtas, you know. He must have missed it. Anyway, so now I've got this one that really kind of matches, so I keep wringing it out. You know, I keep wringing it out. I wash it every night, you know. You can only do that so long. But the point is, okay, big deal, you know. I mean, the whole thing I could replace with $50, you know, it's not a big deal. But they have this fashion industry where if you wear, I had no idea, if you wear the same dress to do different functions, then you become an object of ridicule. The ladies, of course, are like, you know, much more victimized by this than the men, but the men also. You know, shoes. I found the ideal shoes. The vegan Birkenstock. Let me know. Oh yeah, vegan Birkenstock. Not a drop of leather, and they fit perfectly. I don't know if it's just my, you know, and they cost like $30, which is no big deal. And so the last almost a year. And I don't know. Okay, I don't care that they're not totally in style. I'll wear them till I leave this body. You know? So you get victimized by the outside, you know, the outside world. If you don't have Krishna consciousness to be enlivened with, which is really enlivening, then the mind is always agitated and always unsatisfied. It's demonic. It's totally demonic. You know? So Krishna consciousness protects you in so many ways. You know, the whole thing that happened in the 80s with AIDS, you know, and I was thinking, God, I'm so glad I'm out of that. You know, it was horrible. And then the crack epidemic. Oh boy, it's another thing you're saved from. You know, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. Fully satisfying. But Prabhupada does talk about it in terms of addiction. He says once you become addicted to hearing about Krishna, this is a wholesome addiction. There's no bad side effect. The side effect is you go back to God. Okay, any comments? I'm sorry, we didn't. Maybe I'll give you a little poem. Question? No. All right, this is when I was reviewing. Yeah. So this is. We're coming up on this Julan Yatra, this wonderful swing festival. You know. So there's a beautiful painting. These poems were all inspired by the paintings. So the beautiful painting of Radha and Krishna on the banks of the Yamuna, you know. So how's it go? With where blooming flowers spread their sweet perfumes, where clear Yamuna flows and songbirds sing, while all the land a lovely light illumes, Shri Radha and Shri Krishna gently swing. This idol of their love in Braja's bowers forever charms their dearest devotees, whose heart Shri Krishna's sweetness overpowers, obscuring his prodigious potencies. Whatever in this world we know of love, whatever in this world we know as love, is just a shadow of the love they feel. The wise aspire to learn the secrets of devotion's path and taste that love idea. There it is. All glories to Shri. Oh, wait a minute. We have time for one more. Okay, here's this one. I don't know if you heard this one, Madam. This is the fall and redemption of the soul. They've all heard it 100 times, but you may not have heard it. So this one grew out of the rhyme, because I deal with words all the time. You know? So I came across this word cupidity. It's not an unusual word. And obviously it started with, you know, lust. But it's come to mean greed. So it's like a nice combination of lust and greed. That's cupidity. So what rhymes with cupidity? Stupidity. So I saw that and I said, wait a minute, this is the little seed of the poem. So I whipped out my rhyming dictionary and I looked up the iti. And there's tons of words with iti, so I picked a picture. I know I cheat that way. It works. Where Krishna lives, felicity abounds with pure simplicity, and love and sensibility all serve him with humility. But when a living entity rejects his true identity and out of sheer stupidity surrenders to cupidity, he loses all sagacity and with it all capacity to understand reality or curb his sensuality. Abandoning humility, he touts his own ability, forgetting his fragility and fortune's volatility. Immersed in asininity for what seems an infinity of lives devoted to piety, he suffers in anxiety till contact with God's devotee, perhaps of utmost brevity, awakens his affinity for words of the divinity. Perceiving the futility of all his imbecility, the soul regains his sanity and casts away his vanity. Endowed with new humility, he serves with all ability and growing spontaneity his guru and the deity. Regaining his identity, the wayward living entity returns to the fraternity of Krishna for eternity. And there you have it. That poem has the distinction of being rejected by the BPG. And Nagaraj had a good point. The thing is, unless you present it live, it's a very serious subject matter with kind of a flippant and mood to it, and so it kind of is a little rasa. Anyway, it's okay. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.
So, text 37 on Monday? Where is your sidekick?
Damodar?
Yeah, Damodar. What are you thinking?
I don't know. Oh, he's at Osh Beach Farmers Market. Sure.
Okay. All right, what's it going to be with this? Kilo?
Do you know the class time with Sridhar Chaitanya and Shamananda Pandit?
I think so.
Where, I know, was that it? Oh, no, it's not that last time where he was beating Shamananda Pandit. Why Sridhar Chaitanya and then Sridhar Chaitanya? What thank you. Yeah, thank you. They were in the temple and he was having an ecstatic kirtan with the Gaura-Nitai deities and Sridhar Chaitanya was really powerful. And the Gaura-Nitai deities were so alive and they jumped off the altar and the kirtan. And then the pujari comes with a stick, like, get back on the altar. He tries to chase the Gaura-Nitai. But instead, Gaura-Nitai jumps into Sridhar Chaitanya. That's why his name Sridhar Chaitanya. The pujari comes with a stick, get back on the altar.
So, remind me to tell you the story of Ronald Nixon.
Ronald Nixon?
Yes.
Okay. Ronald. Krishna. Yes. Oh. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Oh my.
Oh my.
Well, he mentioned here.
Punjabi, that's English.
No.
How do you say like, oh my God, you know, like ayos me? How do you say it in Punjabi? What? I know you speak Punjabi. Or Hindi.
And
How do you say like, oh my Krishna?
check out on Facebook.
Hey Krishna.
Hey, but that, what is it?
Do you know Bhagavad?
That's why they were staying here.
And then,
Lady Rada is in Northern California with his father. It's kind of special.
Well, Eastern time.
And unfortunately, this is what happened. We grew up. So you out down here for a while?
Well, you're not half was
Okay.
different things.
So you're not getting pregnant?
There's so many different
It is. It's weird.
analysis.
Well, the old ancient science, when they
You can make it try out. Have you ever been involved?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I tried to pick the heaviest part. Sorry. So,
Oh, you took it. Sounds like my back will become like a storeroom. I gotta go in there.
Shri Govinda ki jai. Vande Shri Radha Ginhari ki jai. Jai Jagannath Baladev. Jai Jagannath Baladev.
Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Om Vishnu Padaya and Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashachari Shatarine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhar Shri Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Hare Rama. Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parudikacharya Ashtotter Rishi Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti
Ananda Koti Vaishnava ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem to Holy Krishna Chaitanya Bhava Nityananda Shri Vaidika Dada Shri Vasadi Gaur ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shankun Radhakun Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadik Mayapur Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Ganga में ही की जाए, यमुना में ही की जाए, तुलसी देवी की जाए, भक्ति देवी की जाए, श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन, Transcendental Book Distribution की जाए, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to Shri Guru and
All
Gauranga.
glory to Shri Guru Gauranga. All glory to Shri Guru.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Annakashito vakshaha Ashilatanka takalavu Yito nishinga parato nishingo Yato yato yamitato nishinga Daye nishingo ridaye nishingo Yasinabim sharanam prapade Savakara kamalarare nahakam Amrita shinga Bhavita Rannakashipo Pranam Brahma Kesavakrita Navahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Tapakara Kamalavare Tavakara kamalavare Nakamabhita shinha Indarita Rannakashipo Parambhina Kesavadita Navaharirita Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Tavakara kamalavare Namabhutta shinha Ramandrina Kesavadita Navaharirita Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Keshavandrita Narahararita Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Keshavandrita Sing Hare, sing Hare, sing Hare, Jai sing Hare. Shri Bhagavan ki jai, Prabhupada ki jai, Gopinananda Virgo.
Ronald Nixon.
Ronald Reagan. See, I was thinking Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan. The men.
That's a nightmare.
I was thinking it's one of the two, but it's neither.
Could be both.
Yeah, it's a mixture of both.
You're here. You were not.
Rick. Indira Nixon? Indira Reagan?
Top.
Richard. What do you have? Attack. Oh, cookies. Quick sedation.
What's going on? Okay, attack. No poise, Dean? This is Wednesday.
I think I'll be cooked. Pub usually goes, but he's out of town.
Oh, he's out of town?
Yeah, Pub's out of town, so I think I'll be cooked.
Yeah, I know he did when I walked.
It's dark. Oh, yeah.
Did a problem?
Nobody else can work in there. Yes.
Kind of warm, isn't it? Where's our friend, Suresh?
Well, he's just in the Pujari area.
Guess he's not gonna. This is all he eats, you know.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he completely survives on this. He's become, thankfully, a Sodom body. I remember we learned how every 7 years, all the cells in your body change. Or in other words, you get a new body every 7 years. Some people think, oh, I've been in it for 7 years, I've got this Sodom body now. Cookies. There he is. I knew he would miss out.
Of course.
Not too much.
Yeah, no.
We're not giving him too much. He wants everything.
A little it tastes.
It's good.
Yeah, that's it.
How about one of these?
One.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
One. Some.
Please.
That's it. And a spoon. You okay? Where'd you go?